I've got one request for you guys. At the end of this video, please do me a favor and click that like button if you made it all the way through. It really helps my channel out a lot and I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys so much. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. Here we take a look at some of the most shocking, scary and mysterious medical cases that will leave you questioning reality itself. Today we are exploring the terrifying case of the toxic lady. In 1994, emergency room doctors were faced with a bizarre situation. The patient was an attractive 26-year-old woman who began collapsing after being admitted to the emergency room. But there was something strange about this patient. As doctors tried to resuscitate her, they started to fall unconscious as well. And within seconds, almost the entire staff of the emergency room were laying on the floor, foaming at the mouth, completely unresponsive. What had they encountered? Was this patient a biohazard or something else entirely? How did she even get so toxic in the first place? Let's find out more in today's episode. On August 19, 1994, 26-year-old Gloria Ramirez arrived at the emergency room of the county hospital in Mexico City accompanied by her husband. According to her husband, Gloria had been suffering from abdominal pains and profuse vomiting over the last few days. But as the night went on, she became increasingly worse, which prompted him to bring her into the emergency room. Upon examination, doctors noticed that the young woman was cold to the touch and her breathing was shallow. She was suffering from hypothermia and acute respiratory distress. After performing some tests, doctors found that the patient had a high white blood cell count, indicating an infection. They inserted N4 and began administering antibiotics and other drugs to try and stabilize her condition. However, despite their best efforts, the patient began to rapidly deteriorate. Her heart rate dropped dramatically and she soon suffered a cardiac arrest. Doctors immediately began chest compressions and administered epinephrine, but nothing seemed to work. It was clear that whatever was wrong with her, it was getting worse. As nurses and doctors rushed around trying to save the woman's life, many of them began to feel sick. A nurse who had been taking care of the patient since her arrival suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed. Another doctor who had come to help also began feeling ill and soon blacked out. All this was happening right before the eyes of the patient's husband. He was shocked and confused as he watched one medical professional after another fall victim to whatever was happening. At this point, the patient was rushed into a private room where a team of specialists continued to work desperately to revive her. Unfortunately, however, all their efforts were in vain and Gloria Ramirez was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. The attending physician, Dr. Rafael Sanchez, was shaken by what had just happened. Not only had he just lost a patient, but several members of his staff had also fallen ill. He quickly realized that this was no ordinary case and that there was something unusual and potentially dangerous going on. With a heavy heart and a sense of foreboding, Dr. Sanchez began to investigate. The hospital staff were stunned. They couldn't believe what had just happened. How could a patient bring an entire emergency room staff to their knees? And what was it about this particular patient that made her so dangerous? Was this a case of a superbug or something else entirely? Fear spread quickly through the hospital as rumors began to circulate among the staff. Some whispered that the patient may have been carrying a deadly virus while others spoke of strange toxins. The atmosphere in the hospital was thick with tension and uncertainty. Nobody could say for sure what had happened or how it could have happened. Dr. Sanchez and his team conducted a thorough investigation into the case, examining the patient's medical history, the symptoms experienced by the staff and the results of the post-mortem examination. They wanted to understand what had gone wrong and how to prevent such an incident from happening again. What they discovered was nothing short of astonishing. The autopsy report revealed that Mrs. Ramirez's body contained extremely high levels of toxic substances, including arsenic and other heavy metals. These toxins had caused multiple organ failure, leading to her death. But the most perplexing part of the case was that there was no clear explanation for how she had become poisoned. The doctors were baffled. How could someone be carrying such high levels of toxins without showing any signs of illness? And why did the toxins cause such a dramatic reaction in the hospital staff? They were desperate for answers. Authorities launched a full investigation into the case, but it soon became apparent that there was little trace of how the toxins entered her body. All that they had to go on was the testimony of her husband, who claimed that his wife had been vomiting profusely for days before her death. Despite the lack of evidence, some people began to speculate that Mr. Ramirez may have been involved in his wife's death. Could this have been a case of poisoning? If so, why would he have brought her to the hospital instead of simply letting her die at home? The police questioned him closely, but he insisted that he had no idea how his wife had become poisoned and that he had only wanted to save her life by seeking medical attention. He looked devastated and distraught, which made it difficult for the authorities to piece together what had really happened. As the investigation stalled, fear began to grip the hospital once again. Many of the staff were terrified that they had been exposed to the same toxins that had killed Mrs. Ramirez, and they began to watch themselves closely for any signs of illness. The hospital was plunged into chaos as patients and visitors alike began to avoid it, believing it to be a danger to their health. The hospital's reputation was in tatters and its future was uncertain. Amidst the growing panic, a team of government officials was called in to investigate the case further. They conducted a thorough analysis of the hospital's facilities and equipment, as well as the medical staff procedures. They were determined to find a logical explanation for the mysterious case of Mrs. Ramirez. However, their investigation also revealed no concrete answers. The officials were unable to identify any source of contamination or negligence that could have led to such a bizarre incident. Rumors began to spread throughout the city, with many people believing that the hospital was hiding something. Conspiracy theories abounded, with some people even claiming that the government was involved in a cover-up. As the mystery deepened, the hospital's financial situation grew increasingly dire. With fewer patients seeking treatment there, the hospital was losing money hand over fist and its staff were becoming demoralized. The hospital's future was hanging in the balance, and it wasn't clear whether it would ever regain its reputation. Despite the lack of answers, the government officials were not willing to give up. They continued to investigate the case, following every lead and pursuing every possible explanation. They were determined to get to the bottom of what had happened. Finally, after months of investigation, the government officials came to a conclusion. They believed that Mrs. Ramirez had somehow become contaminated with the toxins while working in her job as a factory worker. The officials hypothesized that she had been exposed to the toxins through her skin or through inhalation, but they could not be certain. They also believed that the toxins had accumulated in her body over time, eventually reaching a level that proved fatal. However, this explanation left many questions unanswered. How did she become exposed to the toxins in the first place? Why did the toxins react so violently with the hospital staff? And why did she not show any signs of illness until just before her death? Despite the lack of concrete answers, the government officials were satisfied with their conclusion. They believed that they had at least uncovered the most likely explanation for the bizarre case. As for the hospital, it was able to slowly recover from the ordeal. The staff were eventually able to put the traumatic event behind them and move on with their lives. But the memory of the toxic lady lingered on in the city's collective memory. To this day, many people still wonder about the strange case and what really happened to the mysterious patient. There are two theories surrounding the mysterious case of the toxic lady. The first theory is that she was carrying a deadly virus that had never been seen before. This virus could have been highly contagious and caused the hospital staff to follow. The virus could have also been resistant to the drugs that were used to treat it, making the situation even more dire. Supporters of this theory point to the fact that the patient's body contained high levels of toxins as evidence of a biological agent being present. The second theory is that the patient had somehow become contaminated with toxic substances, either through her job or through some other means. This contamination could have caused her body to produce an unknown substance that reacted badly with the hospital staff. Supporters of this theory point to the fact that the patient had been working in a factory as evidence of potential exposure to toxins. Ultimately, It is up to each individual to decide which theory they believe. There is no concrete evidence to support either theory, and both have their merits. It is possible that the patient was carrying a new and unknown virus, or she may have been contaminated with a substance that caused an adverse reaction in the hospital staff. Whatever the truth may be, the case of the toxic lady remains a medical mystery that has never been solved. What do you think happened to her? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure to check out some of our other videos. And thank you for watching.